Oh, and Claire is here. Okay, let's welcome Claire. So everyone, hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us earlier than usual. I really appreciate it. Claire is over in London, so she was thankfully going to do this. It's 8 o'clock her time, so thank you for joining us early. But I am Leighellen with Mama Leighellen's Book Nook and my sweet hostess, Missy.
Hi, I'm Missy of Big Sky Books.
So today for our Book Friends Book Club chat, we get to chat with Clare Leslie Hall and finally get to talk in depth about this book. Claire, I cannot tell you how excited we are, and I hope you're as excited because what's fun about this chat, we hear this from a lot of authors, is all of us have already read the book and now we've already discussed it. We had a book club chat before this. So you might get some like pointed questions. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time. So everyone, please welcome Clare Leslie Hall. Claire, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think you're muted still.
Okay.
Hello.
Am I unmuted now?
You are. We can all hear you.
Hey, well, thank you so. Hey, well, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm really excited.
Welcome, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Oh, you glitched a little. Are you back?
I'm back. Let me
Okay,
open my door a little bit. How's it? How's that seeming? Is that seeming okay, better?
good. I've got you. I'll take you. I know it's late,
Okay.
so I
I
appreciate
can
it.
move. I can move. I live in a very old house with slightly rubbish Wi-Fi, so yeah. But usually it's okay.
Well, thank goodness for Wi-Fi because otherwise we couldn't even do this at all.
Exactly. Yes.
So we're just going to let you talk because no one is here to hear me talk. We all want to hear you talk. So let's start at the beginning. Just tell everyone a little bit about you, who you are, how you became a writer, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Claire, and I live in Dorset, and in this very old farmhouse, which I'll tell you in a bit. Kind of, the setting really inspired the book, and we moved here from London 17 years ago, and I have always wanted to be a writer. I've always written. I was a journalist for the first half of my career, worked on newspapers, and I think, it was just a long old road, basically. I started writing what scenes and things that I thought could be novels in my 30s. And just before I was 50, I published my first novel. So yeah, it was a long road, but yeah, I kept going. And this is my third novel, actually.
That is amazing. We love that. We've got a couple of us here are 50 and older.
Okay, well, yeah, it's 50's where it's at.
Yes, I love that. I love hearing these strong women start these, new careers that they're so proud of and love. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. Yeah.
So tell us about Broken Country. Where did this come from?
Yeah, it was random in a way because I've got two grown-up children and then my youngest is now 17 and we bought him a puppy when the elder two there's a 6 and a 8-year age gap, and they were out with their friends and he was on his own a lot, so we got him a puppy and they became really devoted.
Mm,
And one day, my husband was out running with the dog in the fields, and it was lambing season, and the farmer threatened to shoot him, which was horrifying. But from this horror moment of horror, which did not happen, I'm happy to say, came this very vivid scene, and I could see this young farming couple in their field of sheep, and I could picture the young boy who was running towards them, and I have the thought that the boy reminded them of the son they lost, and behind the boy, of course, was his father, and the father was none other than Gabriel Woolf, as we all know, and so it was like these three protagonists came into my head, and they're with all their kind of sexual tension and jealousy and guilt, and of course it wasn't fully formed or anything like. It was actually a very hard book to write, and it took me 4 years and
mm,
countless drafts and giving it up twice. But that initial scene during lambing, and which I think holds the essence of the book really, because you've got them all together at the very beginning, even the dog and the trigger and the boy, and it that was the spark and the idea. It never changed from that. The love triangle was there from
mm.
the very beginning, but the the writing of it did change quite a bit.
Mm.
So, what did your research look like? Did you, you say you live in a farmhouse in a small town, but also this is a story of grief, child loss. There's a court, trial, there's
Yeah.
alcoholism. So, did you have to dig any deeper into any of these subjects?
Oh, I so did, yeah. So we live in this farmhouse, and actually the farmer, we have the house and a little bit of, quite a nice big garden, but he still owns, the farmer who's 85, who was born in our house, owns all the land around us, still farms it. But even though I was walking the dog and, every day in this beautiful landscape, I realized I knew absolutely, and even though there's tractors roaring up and down our lane every day, I didn't know anything about farming. So I spent a lot of time going about with local farmers who sort of very kindly let me join them, and I went combine harvesting. I helped birth a lamb. I learned how to milk cows, and the biggest thing really was I stayed with this couple on their small holding, and that was amazing because I really got to understand what farming meant to them, I think, because they were so it was financially difficult,
Mm.
but they were so passionate about the land and the wildlife and their animals. And she had, I think it's in the book, her husband had built her this sort of slightly ramshackle hide that she could go and watch these nesting birds. And I think I took a lot of their lives I put into, because it really helped me understand this very instinctive connection the farmers had. Like there was this farmer owl that I would go out with, and he'd say, "Oh, look at that," and it would be a sort of a red kite soaring in front of the combine. And I felt that even in the midst of all this really hard work and toil and terrible weather, they would never have conceived of doing anything else. And I really took that away with me, and I really tried to create that for Frank and Beth and Jimmy, I think. And then in terms of the trial, that came really quite late on, like about 2 years on. I remember saying to my husband, there was always, well, Jimmy always died. There was always this death. It's amazing being able to talk without spoilers.
I
It's
know, isn't this
quite,
fun?
it's such a new experience. I keep thinking I can't say that. I can't say that.
You could say
Um,
it all in this
I
one.
could, wow, I love it. Um, so yeah, I remember saying to my partner, I think if I could include a murder trial, it would take the book in a really different direction.
Mm.
And I'd never really even read very much courtroom drama, and certainly not written any. So I went to the Old Bailey, which is this very famous, it dates back to the 12th century courthouse in London, and you can sit in the public gallery and you can watch murder trials. And I watched a murder manslaughter trial, and it was amazing. I just got so caught up in it, and it's very theatrical. It's a little bit like watching a play. And I took so much away from that, I think, just the sort of these beautiful wood paneled walls and the judge in his robes and his wig and the barristers. I really understood for the first time how persuasive each, the defense were and the prosecution.
Mm.
And then I came home and wrote that version of it. So that was quite a bit of research. And also I kept having to, I talked to this amazing retired police detective who read my court scenes because I was worried about getting it wrong because it's not my world. I'm not a lawyer, and he read them for me, and I edited those very. I had to keep just tweaking them and tweaking them, and I read a few novels that really helped inspire me, like Anatomy of a Scandal by Sarah Vaughan. I don't know if you've read that, and
Mm.
Apple Tree Yard. They both have really great courtroom drama in them, and of course To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm.
And but what he said, which was such great advice, he said, because I was worried, must I have the policeman here, and this is how it would go in the court. And he said, don't let how it would play out in real life get in the way of the drama. Just put the drama first. So
Mm.
then I just focused on the emotions that all the characters would be feeling, Frank and Beth. And so, yeah, and I really loved it. I'm probably the most proud of those bits because they were the hardest.
I wondered
I
about
really
that.
liked the trial scene. I thought it was really well written because the chapters sort of got short, and I think it really just worked for the drama of the tension and the emotions. And I
Like the
really liked that.
momentum. Mhm.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Oh, thank you. That's so exciting. And um, I know that I spoke to the film is in development. Fingers crossed something it will happen. But I do know that they've got writers working on the story, and that one of the things that they can do, which I couldn't do, is they can put Beth in the witness on the witness stand, which I
Um,
couldn't because it's all in her voice, and so you needed to see it. I could have, but I wanted you to see the whole trial. So
hmm.
yeah, if that
That
makes
is
sense.
fascinating how having it be a movie changes it a bit.
Yes, yes. Well, fingers crossed that will
Well,
happen.
what I'm so impressed with is that, this group reads a lot. We read a lot of books, and this one is somehow only 300 pages. And yet you have, a love triangle, you have a mystery, you have, themes of grief and trauma and marriage and parenting. And how did you get so much depth in such a short story?
I mean, well, thank you so much for saying that. I don't know really. I mean, I think it might be the fact that I did so many drafts and that the book was so hard because I always had the characters. I always had Beth. She came to me and I knew who she was because of the grief. I knew how she felt, and I knew that there was this passionate love triangle. But the story sometimes it wouldn't land in those early drafts. It was contemporary, for example. I had
Mm,
it in a contemporary setting, and Gabriel and Frank both had voices, and for 2 years they had voices. And Frank I'd written in a very sort of, I really liked it, but it was probably too experimental, quite a sort of earthy, raw
mm,
style. And I think that all of that, which seemed so painful at the time, because I thought, will I ever get it done? Will it ever cross the finish line?
mm,
All those drafts and then bring it up, which I did twice. Once because I was advised to by my agent, and I couldn't bear it, so I had to go back to it.
mm.
But I think all those constant rewriting, it added a lot of layers and depth. I think that's what I think that must be why, because I know it's really quite short.
It is for especially for a
Yeah.
novel that has so many characters and so many themes, but yet, we all felt so connected to all of them and so moved by the story, which is hard to do in a short one.
Oh, well, I'm so thrilled to hear that.
So I always like to ask our authors what kind of writer they are, if they're a plotter or a pantser. And this with like it had 4 parts, all the characters. You already said it took you 4 years and many rewrites. So did you plan it out? Did you write it in one go? Did you weave it together? How did the writing look?
Um, I think I identify as a pantser, because in every walk of life, I think I'm a pantser. But basically, yeah, I think, look, I tell you what it is. I think I start with emotion is the most important thing for me. So I will start with an emotion and the character's emotion. Like in Beth's case, it was yearning. And I think because I'm just starting to think about another book, I think I need to be pulled towards a big emotional scene. So there would be something that is enough for me to want to write it. And Frank was probably my character that was pulling me because I gave up twice, and it was always for Frank I went back. It's funny, isn't it? But
Mm,
even though it's Beth's story, but I think I usually have a sense of the beginning, the middle, and the end, even though that changes, always changes. And I've tried to be a plotter, but it just doesn't suit me. I've tried all the craft books. I've tried doing the beats. When things don't work, that's when I will go, oh, okay, and I'll pick up a craft book and I'll say, right, I should must do the hero's journey. Here it is, map it all out. Just isn't my way though. I think the way for me is to have a really strong connection with a character and an emotion. But one thing I did do, which I think was I've never done before, was I happened to listen to this piece of music, and it's just one little track called "Happiness Does Not Wait" by Oliver Arnold. So it's an instrumental. He's a modern composer, and for some reason, it just was, I heard it and it was literally, I was like, wow, that is Beth and Gabriel. It was Beth and Gabriel by the lake. And then I listened to it maybe like 100 times, and no exaggeration. Then I put together a playlist of probably about 8 tracks, and they sort of, in my mind, they correlated to different scenes. And I listened to them never when I was writing, but on all the in-between journeys, every single school run. My goodness, my son would get in the car and say, "Oh, not this again," And I every supermarket trip, every dog walk, and I think I wasn't plotting when I was listening, but I was staying with the tone and the emotion, if that makes sense. And
Mm.
I really feel it helped me stay with the characters just, well, for 2 years solidly, really. So I think that helped hugely. So I'm going pantser, but with my own strange methods.
I
Do
love
you
it.
have your music on your website anywhere that we could see your playlist?
Oh yeah, I tell you what I've got. I haven't got. Well, I can put it up. I've got the Broken Country playlist, which I
Mhm.
now listen to all the time. The
Okay.
Broken play, it's on Spotify and it's Broken Country Clare Leslie Hall. But that I put together, and it's sort of it's a lot of the some of the music from the book, period music,
Mhm.
1950s, and yeah, I didn't listen to it so much at the time, but it's kind of more now for me. It's Broken Country. It's got I know this is going to sound a bit sad, but I play it if because I feel like if I was missing the characters or whatever, I can listen to that and it takes me straight
Oh,
into those scenes. So I can think of oh, it's got Paint It Black on, which is in the opening, and then it's got quite a few things from the wedding,
Right.
like
From Elvis.
Elvis.
Right.
So yeah, it's there.
Oh, I
I
love
love
that scene.
that.
I'm in love with Frank. I mean, I married a steady Eddie. I've got one of those husbands who's just a rock, who balances the
Yeah, me
chaos
too.
here. So when you were writing, who were you in love with?
Well, I hope that I was really torn.
Hmm.
Frank was always my guy. I like to think I've got a steady Eddie with an undercut of Gabriel, but
Oh my God.
basically, that's the perfect guy. You need a little bit of both,
Right, right. That's fun.
but Frank is yeah, Frank was the one that he had my heart.
Yeah.
And when I was advised to give up, I was devastated because of Frank. And since we're spoiler free, there were about 3 scenes that never ever got cut from first draft to 25th or whatever it was. Um, and one of them, the scene that made me not able to give back on the book was him by the oak tree when he sets fire to the stump. That
Oh,
I could just see it. I could see it so vividly.
that was so powerful.
And so that's been there ever since. So it's quite nice actually because I sort of it was a contemporary story and some in very end stages I was sort of going right back to the beginning and finding scenes and putting them back in, which was really satisfying.
Mm.
But I felt torn when I was writing the book, and there were moments when I thought, gosh, could she end up with Gabriel? Because they have this, it's such a difficult choice, isn't it? Because it's the intellectual life that she craves, and it could have been a wonderful life, and they have this sort of very passionate connection. And I definitely felt torn, and I hoped that's why I did the dual timeline, because I really wanted, if possible, the reader to feel like she does, which is first of all, you're in 1955 and she's falling in love, and you're like, oh, I hope. Well, this is how I was feeling writing it. This is brilliant. This is where she should be. But then the next chapter, she's with this very good man, Frank, and he seems like a great husband, so why would she mess with that? So that was what I was sort of intending with the dual timeline. And I love a dual timeline. It's interesting because I noticed some readers find them really frustrating.
Oh,
I don't
love
I
them.
don't at all.
But a lot
Yeah,
of
me
us here
too.
we're a heavy historical fiction crowd, so that's a
Oh,
pretty
okay.
common method of
Yes.
narrating a historical fiction novel. So,
Oh,
um,
that's true.
I really want to dive into Beth as a character because
Yes. Yeah.
she created a lot of strong emotions in our readers. There were people who really did not like Beth. There were people
Yeah.
who really identified with Beth. And so tell us about Beck because she's conflicting, she's polarizing, um, but she's so real. So let's just dive into her a bit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love Beth, but I realized that she could be an unlikable protagonist because she's unfaithful to this very, very good man. And not, she makes a lot of mistakes, but I really loved her because I think she's a survivor from the beginning and because she's flawed. And also what I want to say is if she hadn't had an affair, hello, where's the story? On a very simple level, she had to. But we
It
couldn't
never
keep
felt
her
like a
sat.
it never felt like you threw her under the bus for a sake of a trope. I mean, it felt like it had depth.
No, oh, not at all. It's that's, but that's it was just funny because right back in the day when earlier on when it was on NetGalley, I saw someone's review and it really made me laugh because it said. You all, I don't do cheating and I'm out. And I thought, I get it, but what's
Right,
the
but
book
there's so much
without it?
redemption in this story. Like you have to read
Yes,
the end.
that's what I think. But I basically I had to work very hard on. I liked her. I like her because I think she's strong and I think that her life gets knocked off course
Mhm.
very easy. And one of the reasons I set it in 1955 was because I really wanted to show the gender and class inequality, particularly
Right.
in rural Britain at that time. And there's Gabriel, who's this wonderful, wealthy entitlement, and they both are just as clever as each other. And they both want to go to Oxford, they both want to be published writers, but hey presto, her life is knocked off course very easily by really snobbery and prejudice. And
The beginning felt
so,
very Jane Austen-esque, you know. You
oh,
had
I
this
love
very
that.
like
She's my
witty banter
favorite.
and yeah, it did. It gave me those kind of vibes, like the witty banter and she has these dreams of writing. I loved it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. But I think that Beth, she gets knocked off course and yet she finds another life and which is more rewarding to her. And so I like that about her, but I completely get that I get why people don't like her. Yeah. What are the
Felt
reasons?
like it's
Come on,
just her choices.
give
It
them
was like,
to me.
why?
Oh yeah, why? I agree.
Yeah.
Why? But look, I think I had to make the reveals. I hope that I made the reveals in a way that you understood. So, for example, in part two, you're building up to that affair or the first kiss. You're building up to that, and the reveals are coming, and actually it stops. Hang on, let me think about this. The first kiss, and then of course Bobby. And
Right.
so and really, I hope that that explains in a way why she behaves as she behaves. And actually, I seem to remember, I think it was my agent. There was much more to that section,
Mm.
and a post Bobby, but she encouraged me to just end it there, and I think it was right.
Hmm.
And so I guess I'm trying to say is that what I wanted with Beth was to reveal her story in a way that, okay, her behavior may not be excusable, but I hope that it's understandable, that you understand why she, but because it's circumstance that made her not with Gabriel and, misunderstanding really.
Right.
Um, And I liked the idea of having this couple that have this big what if inside them, and
Mhm.
which they've sort of tried to tamp down and ignore, and then suddenly there they are, and they're at a crossroads, and they're given the opportunity to have a second chance. That was kind of what drew me to the story.
Mhm.
So while we're talking about Beth, I want to ask about the very last page, the poem for Frank Love Beth. Like, how did that come to be, that decision?
Oh
So cool.
yes, yeah. Thank you for asking that. So, the two things that never changed were that poem and was in the first draft, in the very first draft of this book, which was contemporary, and it had quite a few poems in, which was a really strange diversion for me because I've never written poetry before, and I probably won't necessarily write it again. But anyway, that's just where I went with it. And it was too much, I realized. I actually remember saying to my friend, who's a big reader, I said, there's a lot of poems in this draft, and what would you think if you found a book with lots of poems? She went, I'd skip the poems. And I thought, okay,
Oh, we
good.
love that.
I hear you. I think she was right. But anyway, I loved that poem. I
That's,
always loved that poem
oh,
because it's Bobby's voice. And
yeah. It's
actually,
beautiful. And
that
calling him dad.
draft,
I mean, that's
that
powerful.
that draft, with all the poems were Bobby.
Mm.
But anyway, I look, so that the poem stayed from beginning to end. The poem and the tree burning scene. About the only ones that did, I think.
So
Powerful.
powerful. Mm. I loved the feeling of this story kind of had this overwhelming feeling of nostalgia. Maybe
Oh,
because regret is a heavy theme in the novel too, but it felt nostalgic.
yeah, I'm glad you say that because um, I think I'm endlessly drawn to writing about nostalgia. I think it's really interesting, and actually this. I think that you call them Easter eggs, don't you? But I'll tell you something. There's a scene which I love, La La Land. I don't know if anyone
Oh,
else does, but
yes.
I love that
I
film.
do
I love
too.
it. And one of the things I love the most about it is that what do you call it? Not parallel what is it, parallel universe?
Yeah.
When you're the path you could
Alternate,
have
yeah,
taken.
alternate
That
realities.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that scene at the end. So I
Mhm.
wrote my own version of that, slotted it in quite late on when
Ah,
they're by the lake. It's just a
ah.
few paragraphs, and Gabriel goes off to get Leo from the school, and she's sitting by the lake, imagining if they'd had a child and all these things that they might have done, and if they'd gone to Oxford. And anyway,
I could see
but
that.
you can see that, and I think nostalgia is really interesting because I think we tend to think of it as being a very sort of innocent yearning for days gone by, but in actual fact, it can be really quite menacing if it comes at the wrong
Mm.
moment. And
Right.
if you and I really felt that with Beth, because she's in grief and turmoil, because Frank, great, he's a great guy, but he is flawed too, because he doesn't give her the opportunity to grieve, and that's really what goes wrong, I think.
And he's a
I
farmer. I mean, come on. I live on a farm. Farmer, they're kind of closed off, they go out and work instead of talking
Yeah,
about things. He's kind of that old school farmer. He's not gonna talk about his feelings. He's
yeah,
gonna
well,
go
this is
build
it.
something.
Yeah, 100%. Which is sexy, but
But
it's
not
sometimes
helpful
you
if you're
need something
grieving.
not helpful. Yeah, yes, exactly. But I sort of felt that what I wanted to explore was the dark pull of nostalgia and the fact that what is it she's craving? Is it Gabriel? And it is, but or is I think really what she's craving is being the person she once was, and of course that's not possible because so much has happened in the intervening years.
Well, and I
So
think we all
yeah,
have that in
yeah.
us, right? I think we all, and I think that's the pull of this novel. And it might not be an old lover, but it could be a, what if I had a baby instead of not having a baby? Or what if I took that job? What
Yeah,
if I moved? I think a lot of us
100%.
have those things in our lives where maybe you have a moment where you're like, how'd I end up here? What if? And so a novel like this really just pulls at those heartstrings.
Yeah, yeah, I find it. I really like sort of films and books that look at nostalgia.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this, it's bittersweet, isn't it, as an emotion? It's a bit of sadness that goes with nostalgia because you're
Yeah.
basically yearning for something that's gone and you're not going to get it
You
back,
can't ever
I
get it
guess.
back, right? I
You can't
mean,
get it back.
right. Right now, I'm
But
in a season of empty nesting and I'm thankful to not have kids napping. I'm thankful to not be nursing. But you see another baby and you're like, oh, remember that,
yeah.
So I think you can
Oh,
have that
a
in mother.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Very much so.
Hmm.
And I think there's something special about a first love. This book just,
Hmm.
was a reminder that, you think of that your first love, when you're young. And yeah, I think there's something special about that.
Yeah, I think so too. One of the questions that I've been asked quite a lot, which I wasn't prepared for, but is, was this about your first love?
Oh,
Which,
Oh.
I have been in the same relationship for 29 years, so I think it would be very strange if I was harking back. But I guess I don't think I ever sat there and thought about those formative relationships, but I think I did definitely think about how much bigger it is and how um it just seems like the biggest thing in the world the first time you fall in love, doesn't it? And I think that's kind of what I wanted to create. And definitely I've got two grown-up children and seeing them go through it when it's just all consuming, isn't it? And I guess that's what I tried to create. So I was probably thinking about um my children a little bit and yeah, I guess it's not remembering exactly the relationships but trying to remember that sort of visceral passion that feels like it's been hardwired into you.
hmm. Yeah. Um, I know we have some people that have questions for you. Uh, so let me see if is reading with Kristen on here. She had a good one.
I am.
All right,
Hello.
I'm gonna let you go
Oh, hi,
first. Is
Kristen.
that all right? Thanks for
Okay.
joining us.
Thank you. I buddy read this with Mary Ellen on the call, and I think it'll be one of the highlights of our year. So fun. Thank you.
Mary Ellen
Um,
took
Oh,
like
thank
pages and
you.
pages and pages of notes.
yes. So
Oh,
my
brilliant.
question is, if do you think if Beth had not experienced the tragic loss of her son, would she have made the same decision when Gabriel came back, or would she not have felt that pull since her life would have been, happier and fuller?
Yeah, that's a good question. um I think she wouldn't have made that decision because I think she does have a very rewarding life with Frank. And, she does love him. And I think she would have felt the chemistry and she would have felt drawn to him. But I think she would have not allowed herself to go anywhere near it. And I really believe that um, the reason that that they're both struggling with emotion. I mean, Frank's struggling with so much guilt that he is too closed off, and I think the only way for that marriage to have worked at that particular point was if he allowed her to remember Bobby, and he doesn't allow her to, whereas Gabriel does allow her to remember Bobby, and unwittingly of course, but he gives her what she needs, which is the room to talk about the son that she misses so desperately. So I think if that hadn't happened, I think she is in love with Frank. She would have been stayed faithful.
Thank you for
What
that
do
one.
you think? What do you
That
think?
was my hope.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
yes.
All right, Mary Ellen, you're up. Get out all those notes, but you can't talk to her for a half hour.
I will try. I will try. Oh, I love this book. Oh my gosh. It was really a
Oh,
remarkable
thank you.
read. And I love that you said there at the end that she was in love with Frank because I really saw that. Like I really did. And Frank was such an amazing guy. But what I want to ask you about even in the book, they kept saying it went back to Bobby. Like they kept pointing back to Bobby. And when I thought about it, I really think it goes back to Tessa. Because if
Mm,
she hadn't planted those lies in Beth's mind about her son, and if she hadn't been so selfish that she was preventing him from having the life he wanted, none of this would have happened.
mm,
Do you
Oh
see it that
yeah,
way?
I completely agree with you. And by the way, in this parallel universe, which when you saying, Kristen, would she have been unfaithful? She wouldn't. But also, if Tessa hadn't meddled, she would have married Gabriel. That's for sure. And
ah,
that, in my head, even though Frank was always there and she sort of liked him at the beginning, I think that relationship would have just carried on. I think they probably were meant to be together.
mhm,
Um, but I agree with you. I think it's Tessa as the villain, and it was her meddling that knocked everything off course. But then I think it does go back to Bobby because it's Frank's guilt that causes her the marriage to run into trouble, and it's his inability to allow her to grieve, which causes her in a way to slightly run to Gabriel, I suppose. And I think that Bobby is at the heart of so many things because Jimmy is I feel that what Jimmy's backstory is that they'd both lost their mum when they were 9 and 13, and
right.
he didn't nobody helped him, and his father David was a 1950s man, unable to help him, and he stopped caring about himself. But when and of course with Bobby that continued, and it made him very reckless. And I feel it's Bobby's in the heart of what happens with Jimmy losing the program, really,
That's
because
true.
he so I sort of think it's both, if that
Yeah.
answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think actually, I'm not sure Beth in the end would have been happier with Gabriel than she was with Frank because she wasn't the kind of people that Gabriel's family was. And I think
Mhm.
she would have always been hitting up against the wall of those people where she fit in with Frank and his family and that lifestyle, even though she had that deep love for Gabriel. I don't know.
Oh, I completely agree with you, and I think, I mean, I'm only saying I think that's what would have happened. I think that the great thing about Frank and the farm life, the best thing really, is that she falls in love not only with him but with the land and wildlife and nature. She gets this innate connection to nature which she would never have had, and she realizes it's kind of its own education, and
Mhm.
she can do. And also, she's a 19. Well, we're in 1968. She's doing everything the men can do, which at that time would have been really unusual. So she definitely has the better life. And I agree with you. I think there's a point in the book when she goes to Oxford and she says that if she was, what she's thinking about when she's at Oxford and she's going to be surrounding herself with different kinds of people. I don't think she would have been happy in Gabriel's friendship group, which was too privileged and elite. She
Mhm.
definitely wouldn't have been happy with Tessa as a mother-in-law. She
Mhm.
would have been a nightmare. So,
No
yeah,
kidding.
I think Frank was the better path.
You know what's amazing about this? This will be the last thing I'll say, Leighellen. Here we are talking about these people. They are so real to us. It's like
Right.
we know them, and yet
Yeah.
they're just figments of your imagination, if you will. But I love the fact that you brought them so to life that we're all having these strong feelings. So thank you so much,
Oh,
Claire.
and actually, can I say thank you to you because when you and they are real people to me, obviously, but when you write, and for 4 years it was just me in this little office with these characters, and then your book goes and it goes off to be edited and whatever, and the pub printed, and you lose them, and it is a bit like a sort of a minor grief because
Mhm.
you have to mourn them, But what's incredible is getting them back from readers. So
Oh.
I would talk about them all day, I tell you. I really would.
Well, we
I
would too.
would too. I would too.
And I
So
think
thank
that's what,
you very
like, that is
much.
the sign of a brilliant writer to me. The fact that we all felt so much connection and have such strong, passionate opinions.
It's incredible. And also, I love the fact that it could be seen as a very English book,
Mm.
but I don't think I mean, I'm feeling that nobody's actually saying that. Obviously, it is a
No,
very English book,
it
but it seems
is.
to be connecting with
Mm.
people in America and other countries, and that's so lovely for me. I think maybe it's because, like you say, it's more about the universal themes of grief and love and loss
Right.
than the English landscape.
Well, and I think
Although
we
the English
all
landscape's a big part of it.
we all connect with her character growth, though. She has so much character growth because she gets to that
Yeah,
mature point. Like the young her, of course, wants to choose Gabriel. We all have been that
yeah,
young, foolish person that just wants, you know, pleasure and like fun, right? But she grows and matures and she realizes, by the end, she likes her life. She likes the stability. She likes the land. She loves, the steadiness that Frank and marriage offers. So I don't know. To me, there's so
yeah.
much wisdom in this novel.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you say that. And I actually think that Frank's arc is quite
Mm,
it's significant as well
yeah.
because when I think about him, I think about how, he is this amazing man that everybody adores, including Beth, but he is closed down and he doesn't know how to process his feelings
Right.
and most importantly, his grief. And by the end of the novel, he's done that. And that's been the big change and the big learning curve. So I felt like he had a lot of growth as well.
Yeah. Well, he puts so much energy into Jimmy too, versus, that
Yes.
energy into Beth and his marriage. He really focused a lot on his brother.
Yes, he really did. I mean, he was sort of a parent to
Yeah.
Jimmy, really. Yeah.
Even
Um,
that was interesting because you even brought that in where like their dad was kind of not present, but then becomes present as a grandfather. And I've seen that in families where,
have you?
oh, it's fascinating to me that if someone could be like a
Mm,
crummy dad, but then this amazing grandfather or grandparent or whatever. It's just I don't know. They age too, have more wisdom, have more patience, are more present. Maybe they aren't working the same way they were. It's so fascinating. You really
yeah.
nailed so much of the complex family dynamics.
Oh gosh, I'm thrilled to hear that. Thank you.
Let me go back and make sure I'm not skipping people. Melissa. Melissa, you're up.
There we go. Hi. I
Okay.
it's
Hi.
it's super fascinating to hear you say that you talked about this in a contemporary, like you started some drafts in a contemporary version first. Because we talked a lot in our chat about how the time period really affected this story. And so I'm just curious, like I wouldn't have thought of this question before until you mentioned that. And now I'm like, well, how how closed off was Frank in your first versions of this in the contemporary setting? Because to me, it feels very much in a generational
Mm,
um, type of response. Like he fits the
Mm,
typographical or whatever, 60s man, where you didn't talk about feelings. And I grew up on a farm in Kansas, and that was like my family experience. Like my dad, they would never talk about negative things, almost in this like toxic positivity kind of thing, where like if you just didn't talk about negative things, they weren't real.
mm.
And you only said happy things. And so
mhm.
I'm just curious, like, did those contemporary versions and the historical versions change with Frank?
A little bit, but I think that he didn't change that much in my head. He was always the same character because I think what really is at the root of him being so closed down and not being able to talk about the grief is his guilt, and the guilt that he feels he's responsible for Bobby's death is what makes it so impossible for him to talk about it. So I think he was the same in the contemporary version. But I do remember feeling, I don't know if you've ever read Atonement by Ian McEwan, or there's a novel that I love, which is it's called The Go-Between by L.P. Hartley. And in a way, this book was my nod to that book, because in that story, which I think is set in the 1920s or 30s, the girl, it's the girl who lives in the posh house, and she has an affair with a farmer with catastrophic consequences, and that was always in my head. And I think because those books were in my head, I just sort of felt, and because I wanted to show the class and gender inequality, I just sort of felt that it should be period. It was like an instinctive thing more than anything else. But it's a really good point, and I don't think I consciously made him more buttoned up than he was. I think that is who he was anyway. And that is because of his guilt.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, Missy.
Yes. I was going to ask about the cover of the book. So I was lucky enough to get an early ARC copy, and it had a cursive font, and then it changed to a different font, and then you have an alternate Barnes and Noble.
You with all your covers. You always.
I know.
Amazing. I need all the copies.
I love it.
And then
it's like a dream, isn't it?
You were a Reese selection. You were a Book of the Month.
So the English one,
right? That one, right?
On the UK cover. So there's just so much excitement for this book. So I just am curious about the cover, and curious about you being notified for Book of the Month and Reese's Book Club, like how all that worked. Like how long did you have to keep a secret? Yeah. Like there's just so much excitement.
So Reese's Book Club, I had to keep the secret for nearly a year, which was tough, which was amazing.
A year?
And almost a year, yeah. I think it might have been. That's great. Yeah, I think it was the end of March. It was incredible, and nearly 11 months or something. Wow. That was incredible, absolutely incredible. And then the cover, I think it's funny, so many people put their heads into I think this is what happens, and I didn't know, but I think Barnes and Noble had something to say about the type, and everybody agreed that they didn't like the type. And actually, funnily enough, that I love the oak cover.
Oh, the oak tree.
I do love it,
because the big oak tree.
I mean, no, this is my favorite, but I absolutely adore the oak tree.
The one that you have, Missy?
And the one that Barnes and Nobles have done.
Yeah, I do like the tree.
And
the moodiness of it.
It is moody.
It's moody, and it was the first. It's funny because Simon Schuster sent me two covers, the oak tree and the farmhouse, and that was my editor, and I loved the oak tree, and I was like, I thought Thomas Hardy, it's incredible.
Right,
but then I really felt it was very English, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And I've got a thing about oak trees, and the oak tree is seminal, actually. Yeah. And so I felt that the book should have an oak tree on it, but they decided, and I think they were absolutely right, that they obviously did their research and asked various people. It didn't sort of jump out at you enough. That's what they decided, and I think they were completely right on that. When you see them, but I feel so lucky that Barnes and Noble there went, we'll do the oak tree. That was so lucky.
That is pretty
I got
fun.
both. Quite spoiled, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, to have like already a brand new book out, and there's like 3 different versions. And weird people like us go buy all of them.
It also, it's like, I am a lifelong compulsive daydreamer, and I did
Oh,
not expect these daydreams to come in. And I feel like all these covers, it's just, oh, it's incredible.
a little magical.
So
I love them.
exciting.
That
Yeah,
is exciting.
yeah.
Shanna, you had a question about structure. You
Hi,
have,
hey Claire.
yeah, there you go.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi,
With all the time
hi,
changes.
Shauna.
Um, so I don't know, I'm kind of in this stage of my life where when I open a book and I see that there's like a part one, I'm always curious like where the part two and part three and like what the different sections are gonna have in there. So I was just thinking about while I was reading that all these sections of these different men, and I was wondering why you decided to break it up this way in the chapters to have these different parts.
Well, it's a great question. I think originally I was always writing it in a sort of consecutive 1955
Hmm.
and then 1968. And actually, just to add to that, 1955 then turns into, I think it's before, isn't it? It's before. 1955 is just known as before. And the reason for that is because I had to be quite careful to shroud the exact timings. And when you go through after you've been edited, there's copy edits, you probably know all this, but the copy editor is very, it's maybe it's like line edits, very precise and detailed. And when did this happen? When did she get married to Frank? And I'm like, I can't say that because then that blows all the twists. So
Hmm.
I think um to answer your question, initially it was just the two timelines, and then I realized that I had to structure it a little bit differently, just to be a little bit more careful about protecting some of those twists at the end. And so it went into initially, I think it was three parts, and then the trial at the end. And then at my agent's suggestion, she said, I think we need a fourth part, Jimmy, which she was absolutely right about. And then I wrote a little bit more about Jimmy.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you a book that I don't know if it's in parts, but did you like The Paper Palace? I loved that book.
Oh,
And I
yes.
think
In
she
a
does it,
heartbreaking
doesn't
way.
she? She does. It might be called I think she structures hers in parts as well. And I felt it really worked
Mhm.
well. I think that probably I got might have got the idea from her.
Hmm. Um, who else? I feel like one person had. Oh, well, Janie, you didn't have a question, but you had a comment.
Hi. Yeah, I
Hi,
just
Janie.
wanted to
Hi,
say,
Janie.
I guess I'm the representative lawyer in the group, and I am a retired litigator. I spent my life in courtrooms, and I could not believe how masterfully you handled those courtroom scenes because you didn't get
Wow.
bogged down in legal details. This is not a legal thriller. And the part that I think a lot of attorneys miss, they become authors and they write, intriguing legal thrillers. Okay, like Scott Turow is probably the king, right? But they forget about how much emotion is
Hmm.
in a trial. And yours, you took us in the courtroom and we got the gravity of the proceedings, but we didn't need to get bogged down in who filed what motion and who pled what, It was all about
Great.
Beth watching this thing unfold and people's lives at stake. And I'm almost relieved to hear that you're not a lawyer because you got it so perfectly right.
Oh, Janie,
Bravo.
you have made my day. I'm over the moon to hear that because the thing is, I've always worried that lawyers was, and actually, I did a podcast with a barrister who's become a crime author. And
Oh,
I said, oh no, this is going to be a nightmare because I'm sure I've got it all wrong. But anyway, I'm really happy to hear that because, and I think it was this policeman who sort of released me from
hmm.
worrying too much about whether I was doing it in exactly the order you would have it in a courtroom, which I definitely wasn't. And actually, I think in terms of the structure as well, being able to feed scenes through the book, which helped with the suspense, but I also think it probably helped me not worry about it all going in the order it should have gone,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, that is
It
high
does.
praise
And
from Janie.
Oh, I honestly, you've literally made my day because I always worry
well,
about that.
I mean it. And it's important because it's Beth telling the story. So,
Yeah.
it would be so bad if you got into how this all was working. It's really what she's perceiving and how she's experiencing this that's so perfect. Because, lay people sitting in the courtroom do not see it the way we do. Not at all. And we
Okay,
forget
brilliant.
that sometimes. So
Oh,
Brilliant.
that's so
Oh,
sweet.
I love that. And
Um,
now I'm going to say that. I'm going to say exactly that when I get asked the question. I'm going to say,
you
lay
can quote
people don't
Janie.
see it the way. Yeah, I've been told. So yeah.
And then Jackie has a question about the audiobook. And while Jackie asks her question, everybody get your books out because before I will ask a couple more questions, but I want everyone to be ready with their books because we always take a picture and I don't want to forget. Okay, Jackie, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had to find where it is on my new computer. So the audio was so good.
Yeah.
I loved that you had the same narrator the whole time. But you still clearly could tell when she was talking about the different timelines, and you had so many references to different books and different things, and the narrator just did such a good job of letting you know like kind of what those things were. Like the one that stuck out to me was the Of Mice and Men reference to Frank and Jimmy. And she did such a good job. So did you get to choose her? Was she chosen by your publisher? How did that whole thing
Yeah,
work?
I think I completely agree with you. And actually, um, I was in New York for the launch, and then I came, and then the audio was out, and I listened to the audio on the flight and home, and then I listened to it for the first 2 days driving around in my car. And honestly, I mean, every line that was coming, I knew, but it felt like a completely different experience, and I felt so emotional. I think she was spectacular, really. Oops, I'm losing my and I think what happened was the publisher just said to me, we really want to. Can you hear me properly?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
okay. The publisher just said, this is who we really wanted, and here she is. And they sent me some snippets, and I could hear what sort of accent she did. But the only thing I did get to sort of say was they told me, like Tessa's going to be received pronunciation, and Frank's going to have a slight Dorset accent, and I was able to say, which I really wanted Frank to be not so broad, just a twang would be perfect. And I also didn't want Gabriel to be so posh it was ridiculous, because I think that's really off-putting. He's got to be sexy. So yeah,
love
but
it.
I thought she nailed it. I loved. I mean, I look. You would probably know better than me, but I thought that she did a Californian accent for Louisa. I felt that she literally. I thought she was flawless, brilliant. I loved her. I thought she was amazing.
And
Very
like you
lucky to
said,
get
they
her.
weren't, and none of them were overdone. You could tell it was a different person. You could tell they had a different accent, but none of it was overdone.
Yeah, oh, I'm so glad. I thought she was wonderful. Really, I was absolutely thrilled.
That's so fun. Okay, so we like to take our picture with our author. So everybody get your books out.
Shall I get my book?
Yes,
Or
get your book.
yes, hang on.
See,
Yeah,
look how
I've got
fun.
my
I
book.
switched the view and then there's like 8 million of you on my screen. Hi, everybody. If you guys are here, like Joe, I know that you have yours blacked out. If you guys want to hop back on, look at all those books. It's so fun. If you read it on your phone, you can hold up your phone, whatever. Okay, let's see. Do I have everybody in the screen? Looks like I'm waiting on Heather. Heather, run and go get your book. I see you running. It's okay. We'll wait for you. I'm trying to go through everyone. I think we got everybody. Nope. Melissa's working on it. Okay, there we go. All right. Hold up your, yep, ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you good, Missy?
Yep.
Okay. Missy always takes one with her computer that is like way better than mine with my phone. I take one with my
But
phone
it's
and I
too
inevitably
wide for
chop someone's head off.
Instagram, so
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so Claire, we always like to ask our authors before we go, because I know we've talked forever about this book and we loved this book, but we also now are hooked on you. And so what is next? We always want to know what you're working on next. Because also I went
Yeah.
to Goodreads thinking this was like a debut, but then you had 3 books, and then they all said they came out on the same day, and I was so confused.
Oh, I know. So that's so nice for me actually because first two books, which were published in the UK and England, sorry, UK and Germany, under my name, Claire Amson, my married name.
Oh,
The
okay, that
Simon
makes more
Schuster
sense.
have bought those books and they've given them covers. And actually, they were positioned in the UK, not in Germany, but in the UK as just pure thrillers, which I never felt they were. They're really quite similar in the sense that they've got dark love stories at the heart of them.
Oh,
Um, that's that was exciting, and I think they're going to come out as paperbacks in the summer, maybe, hopefully.
yeah, and it looks like they matched all like they put new
They
font on them, and
did.
they all have kind of similar like
Oh, they're gorgeous.
background.
I
They
love
are
the cover.
beautiful.
Because the UK, I think Germany did a beautiful job with very floral covers, but
Mm.
the UK covers were certainly for the second book was just a bit of I don't know, it was just too dark and thrillery, I felt for the it's got quite a sort of passionate 1970s love story in it. So I just never felt it fitted. And one interestingly for me anyway, one thing I got to do was the second book I had a 2 book deal and I wrote it so fast because I only had a few months, 6 or 7 months to write it, which I am a slow writer. And I think the book was great, but I never felt I'd got the ending right. And when they were republishing them in both the UK with the Clare Leslie Hall name and in the US, I was given the opportunity to go and do a light edit on them, and so I got to do a new ending, and it's a redemptive ending. I way prefer it, so that was good. Um,
It
oh,
looks like one comes out in August in the US and the other one in September.
Oh, I muted myself. Whoops. Which was the one that had the new ending? The pictures of him or Days You Were Mine?
Days You Were Mine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, how
yes, you get
fun. That's pretty cool.
that was so cool. Yeah, it's just a tweak, but the ending was just, I was so happy that I got, because I was always, it's just, the ending was fine before, but it just niggled me that I would
Mhm.
have done it differently if I'd had longer to think about it.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, you never really get that. So that was fun. And then now, I am quite busy, so I haven't really started anything, but I've had this idea that's bubbling around, which I can't tell you too much about, except that there's a family at the heart of it, and I've got a family in a setting, and the setting is this clifftop hotel
Mm.
on the Jurassic Coast in Dorset, and it's this family. I don't know, have any of you ever read I Capture the Castle? It's
Oh,
a
yes.
wonderful
Mm.
book, and I've loved it since I was a child. It's sort of always in
Mhm.
my head. So I do love a book that's got an eccentric family, and I've got that, and I've got a sort of, is it a love triangle? I think it is. I'm afraid it is. Yeah, it's another love triangle. It's different though.
So
But
what year or era?
I think it's going to be 60s, sort of
Okay.
mid early 60s, early to mid 60s. But I did start writing 5,000 words I wrote, and
Oh,
then
wow.
I went over, there was a sort of psychiatrist in it, and a friend of mine, a hospital psychiatrist, a friend of mine really kindly invited me to the hospital where he works, and I had an hour with this psychiatrist. She was amazing. She was so helpful, and she told me so much stuff, but it was all quite dark and quite
Mm.
thrillery. And I came home and went, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So I
Oh,
stopped writing that. But the premise, the setting, the
mm.
family, they're all the same. And this week I'm going on a lot of train rides because I'm doing quite a lot of UK promotion. So I think take the notebook, let's get this story going.
That's so exciting. I love that you're also kind of learning about yourself and the writer you want to be. Like that you can write a thriller, but it's not. Maybe it's a mystery that's more literary, or it's a
Yeah.
romance with a mystery in it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I was lucky because this book is a real mashup, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was really lucky. I actually changed agents, and my previous agent was brilliant, but I remember her saying, and I think the market's changed because
Yes.
Well, it was 2017 when I got that first deal, and it was hard for her to position a love story that was crossed with a thriller, which is what my first novel is,
Huh.
Pictures of Him. But when this one went on submission, my new agent said in the sort of heading, a love story with the pulse of a thriller, and she made a virtue of it. And I think people are readier for genre mashups, and
I
I like
do
to read
think
and write
so.
those.
It used to be that kind of, we've heard that from a few authors that like they were kind of pigeonholed into, I had to only
Yes.
write historical fiction or I had to only write thrillers. And now you see more of a mix. So we love that.
Oh, good. Me too, because I mean, The Great Gatsby is one of my favorite books of all time, and that's a love story with a murder in it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we all have depth and creativity. We want to read a variety of things. So I like that. What is next for you? Like are you still touring for this book? Are you coming to America
yes.
to do any visits? Like if people want to see you, how can they see you? If they want a signed copy, how do they get a signed copy? Like go ahead and give your
Um,
spiel. If
oh,
you have it, do you have a
okay.
shtick?
Not really, because I have got a new website, which is just
Oh, that's exciting.
clarelesliehall.com, and I will be putting events on the page
Okay.
um, when I'm told how to do that. And when I haven't got a US tour, but I think I reckon I will get one hopefully in the summer. So I haven't got any details like that. But I tell you what, I'm on Instagram at Clare Leslie Hall. Um, so I can always put things on there too.
Oh,
And
that's
I
fun.
really, I absolutely love the States. So yeah, any opportunity I get to come back, and I would love to do a book tour. So I
Our
hope
readers
I'll.
love to see their authors. We love to give you a hug. We love our signed copies. And especially after we've talked to you, it's always fun to meet in person and be like, remember when you came on and we talked online?
Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun, honestly. Thank you so much.
Well,
I've
Claire,
really
thank you
enjoyed
for
it.
your time. Like, this was fantastic. Thank you for answering all our reader questions and for sharing so much of your heart about this story.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
We loved it. Thanks for joining us, friends. Anybody else want to say anything before we go? Other than thank you. Thank you. Thank you for writing
Thank,
something so magical.
oh, thanks so much. It's
All
nice to see
right.
you all.
Well, we
Okay.
will follow along on Instagram and we will keep our fingers crossed that you come to America and we'll watch out for that next book.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I've loved it.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.
Okay, thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye. Bye, friends. Thanks so much.